What's going on, my friends? This is Shane Lowe coming at you from Supersense Live, and today we're doing something a little bit different. This is really cool. It's something I'm really excited about because we usually focus on the arts, and that's not necessarily different today. Actually, we're still focusing on the arts, but it's a little bit different kind of art. So I'm chatting with John Hlivak today, the creator of the first accessible computer. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Shane.
I'm really glad to hear that. Thank you so much. Tell me, tell me how you got started. I mean, what got you interested in this project? Tell me a little bit about who you are and what
Well,
got you into all this.
okay. Well, when I was young, I had very rare arthritis when I was 3 years old, which in the 50s they didn't believe kids could have arthritis, so it was very badly treated. And one of the outcomes from that was my eyes were slowly going on me. And my father was an inventor. He invented the first smoke alarm. He invented the first. Actually, he invented rabbit ears antenna for TVs
Oh,
and
that's so cool.
a few other things he used to do. So I kind of learned and was raised in a TV store, the old time TV stores in Chicago, where you go in and you either buy a TV that's the size of a coffin or made out of wood, mainly, or you had your TV fixed, or you tested tubes back then to see if that was the problem with your TV. So I kind of was since I could walk, I was in electronics where I watched and learned that way until when my father had to go with my mother in the evenings out. I got so bored when I was about 7 years old. I still could see. My father had to bring me stuff to work on just to learn. Like he had a friend in the Air Force, and I had a jet radar, nose radar, that he had me totally take apart. And I thought I was taking it apart for the parts and everything that was important for him, but he landed up, it was a surplus thing, and he landed up throwing it out without me knowing it, all the parts of that. But it kept me busy.
Yeah.
And also, it started that way. Then, after some years, I became a drug therapist. Drug therapist in the cities here. We used to. I'm from Chicago, but we used to come way up north to the White Earth Reservation and fish every year, and we had land there. So we knew Minnesota for that reason, and I ended up moving to the Twin Cities, and I became a drug therapist or a counselor generally, and that just wasn't a good fit for me. I wasn't. I did all right in it, but it just wasn't the nuts and bolts that I liked. So
Sure.
I went from that to became a ham radio general license operator, and got locally on ham radio. I should say locally. I was local, but I talked to people all over the world with it. And I had a friend that I met through the ham radio that was a genius in computers. He worked on mainframes. That's all it was then. We're talking now the very late 1970s.
Right, right.
He is a young guy, and he was able to do a lot. And he knew so much when it was starting to transfer from transistor to ICs chips. And I said one day to him, because at this point I'm blind now. I'm 23, blind, get along fine. And the only thing that I went to blind school at that point, because I actually went blind so slow that I was only able to see about 15 feet in front of me, and I was driving a car at times around parts of Chicago because the cars were so close together on the street that I could see the front car with no problem. So I just thought everybody could see that way. Nobody said, "Hey, you got a problem." So
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying like that's really interesting to think about. I've never thought about it that way.
Yeah, your brain literally adapts. If whatever sense that you start to lose, if you lose it slow enough, your brain totally adapts to it. It's so remarkable, the brain. So I could only see about 10, 15 feet in front of me, and I thought everybody could pretty much. And I finally got to the point where when I started. I should go back a few years. About 20 is when I knew for sure I was going blind, because they operated on one eye for cataract, and I had what's called iritis from the arthritis. And that eye went dead immediately after surgery. So they left the other one alone and said, "Well, good luck. You got one you can still see day and night, and like you did before, but it'll go too eventually." So I went to blind school in the Twin Cities here, and I figured, you might as well try to learn to get a blind certificate or something, if you go to it. Anyhow, I learned all of the blind stuff, but I for like anything to do with math, that's all we used. That's all the blind had was an abacus, a Chinese abacus. It was a handheld one. And I learned to divide, add, subtract, everything with an abacus. And I thought, that is really ridiculous. I mean, we were past the era of calculators that you were mechanical, that you pulled the
Right.
bar with. We were already in a more digital world, and I just thought that was so absurd that I couldn't believe it. And there were other things too that I could see if it talked, everybody could use it instead of just sighted people. So anyhow, back to this ham friend that was a genius and mainframe computers and stuff. Uh, Him and I got together, and I said, is there now? This was at the time now where 1980. There was Apple E, I believe back then, and there was the Commodore computers, and the hard drives were that was just fiction. It was all cassette. Cassettes was your hard drives. Actually, took forever to get information off them, but it was for
That's so
play.
interesting.
Yeah, it was mainly for play, and people bought them for games. It is a gaming and maybe a good calculator at that point. Well, we took there was CPM came out with the Osborne One computer back in 1980, which was the very first portable computer that it weighed a whopping 32 pounds of a portable computer.
I think that's I think that's
So
more than my entire backpack full of computer stuff weighs
yeah,
right
isn't
now.
that something? 32. I had to go all over the country showing these blind agencies what we were going to have. And my wife was the one that lugged it around on the planes, and the Osborne company was everybody knew the Osborne One that were anything to do with business because that was the leading edge of first time that people in their homes could have a real computer, and we
So I know the
go ahead.
Osborne one is portable, but
Yeah.
were there any other differences between the Osborne one and the Commodore and the Apple E that were out beforehand?
Absolutely. The Apple had their own operating system, and Commodore had their own little operating system like that was actually based on the language of BASIC language, which isn't much used, if any, anymore. But this was actually very serious operating system. It only took, nowadays with Windows and Apple, you got to figure that you're dealing in anywhere from 70 megs of space to and up. That computer actually had an operating system that was so clean that it was only 2K of memory in it,
Two
which is
kilobytes.
just yeah, 2,000 kilobytes or 2,000 bytes, I should say.
2,000 bytes
Yeah, and that
of.
was it. And a
How is that
sidebar
possible?
to a sidebar to that. There was another company that came out after Osborne that competed with them, still with the same exact operating system, CPM, which stands for computer machine, computer processing machine. It's CP/M technically. Anyhow, another company came out that was even more powerful, not in processor. We didn't, you got a Z80 processor that did everything. It didn't do it in any kind of gigabytes or that speed-wise. You just, you bought a Z80 chip and that was it. You whatever you got, and that was all you dealt with, and you didn't have any extra memory or anything like that. You had maybe I can't even remember now. It's been so many years, but maybe about maybe 4 megs of memory inside the computer to deal with. I don't remember. Maybe that seems high too, but what we had was floppy drives that the machines used, 5 1/4 floppy drives. There were 8-inch floppy drives that used to go with mini frames and mainframes, but these computers took a 5 1/4 floppy drive that held a big whopping 183 K of memory. And then the second one that I told you that came in as competition actually used both sides of the disk, and it doubled on that computer. Now we're talking Z80, we're talking no memory, and we're talking about just a it was very basic, no color. It was monochrome, no graphics. So that took left you with room, of course. They used that computer, and this could be verified. NASA used their portable CPM computer. It must have been one of the Apollos that they used.
Might have been 13.
And
Might have been 13.
I get confused with that because that was far out of my field with computers. So yeah. We're talking 1980, so whatever, it must have been Apollo or Gemini in 1980. Anyhow, the Osborne that had, now I'm going to tell you, it had the monitor built in. The monitor was a whopping 3-inch monitor, 3 inches diameter monitor. Now it was really made. It had a weird parallel port and a weird serial port, of course, unique to their own. It really wanted you to plug into a monitor, black and white monitor, but it had a 3-inch screen, which I used to advertise that if you're not blind now, use that monitor and you'll land up buying our computer because they're so tiny.
How much did this thing cost? This Osborne one.
The Osborne one. Let's see. I only remember what we had to sell it for once we put the voice, created voice for it, but probably we're talking well over $2,000.
Wow.
Yeah, over 2,000. Our talking computer was actually $3,200, and we were only making like a couple $100 on it. So
oh my goodness.
Yeah, you're
with
talking
all those
about
expenses.
Yeah, very expensive. But it was the first of the real computers. I mean, that's when they were able. That's when you started to see what was called RBBS, which was the internet wasn't invented yet. RBBS, we had our own RBBS system, which stands for Remote Bulletin Board Systems, and it was like the internet where you had your own site, but people had to call a dedicated phone number to access your computer to do whatever you created it on the BBS systems. Um, we had calls from Australia daily and London and long distance calls that would just for them to get on. And I had a barter board. It was called U.S. Barter Board. And it was for people that freely wanted to trade anything and everything or sell anything or everything. And we had people that would get on there just so they could get on somebody else's computer and look around to see what there was. And of course, the baud rates on the modems at that time was a whopping 300 baud, which was so slow that a sighted person would literally, when the screen would refresh, it slowly came up like if you were opening up a theater curtain, it just slowly moved up to the next.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was just amazing.
That's crazy. So when you
go ahead.
Oh yeah, so I wanted to take it back to you met this guy on ham radio who was a genius.
Right.
So where did it go from there? So these Osborne ones had just come out in 1980.
Okay, yeah, they came out, and we could have done it with any other, like with the Commodore or that. I mean, they weren't powerful. Like I said, they were toys. What we did is he took the knowledge of mainframes and mini frames and incorporated what we could work with in the Osborne One to get it talking. And the only way we could get it talking is there was a company out west in California called Street Electronics in Carpinteria, and they made a little box about 2 inches high by 8 inches wide by 6 inches deep, maybe, with a speaker on it and a serial port and a parallel port. That actually that's all it was a signal generator, meaning that you could get tones out of it. You could, if you wanted to fool around with it, you could try to make it like some music, almost Moog-like music. Although it did sound like a Moog, it was one signal tone that you heard. Well, they were hardly selling them for anything. I mean, it was only for the hobby guy to want to make a Twinkle Twinkle Star with it or something, play. We literally, at that point, the big guys in the industry had what was called compressed voice chips. They just created and invented, which meant that a calculator could go, if you hit 1, it says 1. If you hit 9, it says 9. But what it was, and it would do it very clear, but that's all you could access was 1 through 0 through 9. It was literally almost like a tape recorder built into the IC chip. So that was the only thing that they did, and we weren't able to use that technology because, I mean, we would need thousands where one would make up just one word, and we'd need mainframes, about 6 mainframes, just to run it, where it would run sentences together. So what we did was we took the regular signal generator and we created phonetics sounds coming out of it, generating out of it. Uh, you know that I just lost his name in my mind. Well, you know, one of the leading scientists out there that he's paralyzed. What's his name?
Stephen Hawking.
Hawking. Yeah. Now you hear his synthesizer, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
that literally came. Really, the company took the technology from ours and made a computer board that had that in there. And that's called phonetic speech, what he uses. And the reason it sounds unhuman was because you know, to make every word you want, you had to try phonetically make the tones fit that kind of word. So once we created and put on these floppy disks uh, these words that we created from just a signal generator, that became, when you turned on the Osborne One, you heard AVOS ready. And AVOS was our company, which was Audio Visual Operating Systems, technically, but everybody knew it as AVOS, AVOS. We then, so we did that, and then we started to try to create some chips instead of putting 1, 2, 3 to 9 onto one chip. We started to put the basic instruction for those phonetic signals onto the chips, so that it would go that much faster when you used a computer. So when you hit the keyboard, whatever key you hit, it would say A, B, C, D, E, F. And then if you ran a program, it would talk to you just like Hawkins does. That's all. He has exactly really what we had now, he's using now, and he doesn't want to go to the new stuff. Now they got voiced, synthesized computers that are human sounding because they're so powerful now. I mean, Apple and Microsoft, your home computer was equal to, and I'm not talking space, memory, or anything, just power was probably 25 Osbornes would equal your average computer right now, home computer. So, but Hawkins liked that sound because it sounded, I don't think so, living in Minnesota, but he feels that it sounds a little bit like almost a Norwegian accent in its mechanical sound. He could easily use human sounds, but he likes to be able to create, if he wants to say which is which, he could make it in with that type of system that we created, the phonetic speech. He could make it say which of the which is which, you know, in different tones, different examples of the word. So that's basically what we did. We created it, and then we went to every state in this country first which we were running on shoestring money. I mean, we it was a five-person ownership. We had a lawyer as the president. He went and tried getting all the grant money possible. We had a FCO, which took care of bills, and we had one guy that was kind of a gopher for this technician and I to work on the computers themselves. And we started to sell these computers even to hospitals because, like in Chicago back in the 80s and 90s, early 90s even, they had a lot of blind people doing their transcribing. Because, I mean, great stuff. Blind person could type without no problem. And they did all the transcribing from doctors putting information on cassette to putting it on paper. They were buying them like crazy from us because for the first time the blind person was able to recheck, and there was a program made for CPM called WordStar and CalcStar and a few other programs that, in my opinion, was as good of a word processor as what we have today with Microsoft's Word. And
That's amazing.
you have to deal, though, with the two floppy drives all the time, Then they came out with, Seagate came out with the first hard drive, which weighed, it was between 15, I think it was 15 pounds, the hard drive. It had its own, power supply in the box, and the whole thing was equivalent to maybe almost a 13-inch older tube TV size, roughly. That held a whopping 5 gigs of memory in that hard drive. It had.
Wow. What year was this?
Yeah, it was. It literally had 8 planners inside it to hold the 5 megs in it.
It held 5 megabytes?
5 megs was the maximum, and you could
With
see
8
that.
platters.
You could
Wow.
see that in Washington, D.C. Museum, and I believe New York still Museum might have it there yet too, but they got the Osborne at all those museums. I have one that I kept for myself. I don't know why. I was going to make a lamp out of it or something, but never did. But we then started selling. People were calling us up from New Zealand, and I barely knew where New Zealand was, and Australia and all these countries saying that we hear you got a computer that we could do word processing and it works with a modem. Washington, D.C., the Department of Justice called us up and said, we have 20 blind lawyers on our staff in Washington, D.C., at the Department of Justice. They can't do anything except simple things, their own filing systems and that with paper. They said if you could prove that they could use it, we will buy it. We went there with our computer, our Osborne, and our 300 baud modem, and we were able. We had to write our own terminal, what was called terminal program that would be equivalent to like Firefox or one of those browsers. And they said if we could at all even try to get anything out of Nexus and Lexis, which lawyers use for all of that's their libraries and everything, it would be great. Well, within 20 minutes, I had all the big shots from Department of Justice and all the blind lawyers, and in 20 minutes, I had them on Lexis and Nexus, and where we were able to use it any way they wanted. I said, okay, what do you want? What do you want? I couldn't let them do it because, of course, they never even touched a computer yet. So I had to, do it for them. They heard it, and then afterwards, I let them play with the computer to see what it was. The big problem back then, was we had to go to blind conventions, which there were two main organizations that held state conventions throughout the country. ACB and NFB, American Foundation for the Blind and National Foundation for the Blind. They totally independent of each other. We had to go to their conventions, which would be people from all over the country, blind people going to them. You try selling a $3,200 talking computer that people are still using Commodores to play ping pong, and try to sell in 10 minutes or less people into your computer that what they could do to it, what they could use it for, database. We have a database for them. And when we would say, you could have 1,000 people out of your database, and within, at that time, I hate to say, to scan a database throughout with 1,000 names might take 10 minutes to search. We tell them 10 minutes, and you could go and find anybody within that. They just thought we were blowing smoke. They couldn't imagine it. And actually, even at that time, we demoed one of our computers to Stevie Wonder. Ray Charles, he actually bought one. We had problems with Stevie Wonder as far as he wanted to get in on it, and his ideas wouldn't have worked for our company. But so we
What happened there?
Well, he was so excited because Stevie Wonder's a genius in music. I used to be in bands myself. I played lead guitar and then drums when I was a teenager. And,
I'm a drummer. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah?
I love it.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, right on.
Anyhow, so, Stevie Wonder's a genius. I mean, he plays all these instruments, and he creates this music. He always did. He's just an absolute genius when it comes to music. He's up with Mozart and that, and rock. And people get mad at me when I say that, but it's true. He was able to create music that was incredible that he did on his own, and he recorded all his. Well, for a couple of years, he recorded all of his music by himself in his basement. I'm recording 16-track at first, and then it went to 32-track at that time. But anyhow, he wanted to get in on it where he would start promoting it on TV and show what could be done, and he was going to incorporate it with music and studios, which would have been good and probably was done. But it he had no concept of what it took for us to really get these things running right, and then educating sighted people didn't know what real computers were. I mean, they were Commodore and Apple E, which Apple was more sophisticated, but it did the biggest program that they sold was Blackjack or 21. So it still was mainly games at the beginning of Apple. And we could have used an Apple if we wanted to, but they were so closed in their technology, that operating system, that they just wouldn't let it out that easily, and we didn't have time. So Microsoft
Right.
worked with us, on the operating system. So that's how it went, and it went up worldwide, and we didn't even advertise anywhere. We just went to every state's convention, and it got out and went all over. Braille Institute in California is one of the biggest places for the blind. Takes a block by block the building, and we used to we'd set up our computers there, and I would teach the main trainer how to use it, and then how to teach blind people how they could use a computer, and then they would buy it and that. And then Apple, there was a blind guy that started right away getting Apple going with his program. Actually, two guys, Mr. Grimm and Mr. Holiday, and they got going on the Apple side of things, but slowly, because again, there was so much restrictions with Apple than there was with CPM. Was absolutely totally open. It was just fruit. You could do whatever you wanted to with it. So that's how we went. But we finally, we were still even. It was funny because all around the world, people knew of us that had anything to do with the blind, and yet we were pulling in. Now this is 1980 to 83. We were bringing in, probably making $1,000 a month. That wasn't clear, but no insurance, no nothing. It was very hard, and it was many hours. But people would say, we must be a huge company. We'd love to tour your plants. And we had an office inside one of those rent office deals. In Minnesota, they were called office plazas, where you rent a little office there and that, with 3 rooms maybe in there, and that was it. So we literally went bankrupt, being worldwide known, and the government, federal government, and NASA wanted us to incorporate voice in their at that time it was for sure Apollo systems, not to use for anything but for voice. They wanted the voice part that we created, the phonetic voice that would tell them
Right.
readings, like jets do now, even in the Air Force. It says you're going low, you're going low. That's what it was. That came from our stuff.
Right.
So it just split up into all that.
So with all that interest and all of those people internationally working to support you, how did the company go bankrupt? Was
Well,
it
I'll tell
what
you
happened?
how it did. There was no way with the CPM operating system that we could make it where it can't be stolen, our software. On floppies, there was just no way that we could, if we sold a person a Osborne with our software packages, and anybody could have bought that signal generator. Um, yeah, you could go and sell it to 10 other blind people if you want and make money, Joe Schmo. But and that's what was happening. Actually, I won't mention which of the blind agent or blind groups, but there was one blind group we sold it to their main offices, and we found out later that over 15,000, which was at that time, I think, the amount of blind people that were in their group, they all had our system, but it was just copied off. That's all you do is copy one floppy to an empty floppy, on one floppy drive to another floppy drive, and you had our system pretty much. So a lot of it got stolen. Some of it we gave away, and when I said worldwide, I don't mean like 100 from Australia, 100 whatever. This was small bits because blind people, like I said, they didn't believe that there could be anything beyond an abacus yet at that point. So you had to see it, you had to feel it, you had to try it, you had to challenge us to show you that it would work the way you want it. And then they learn that that's what they want. I used to give talks. I did interview with NPR, national NPR in Washington, D.C., and they said, how do you explain? Now this is national. You'd think they would know it in the studio. They said, how can you explain a computer and software? Now what's what? What is it? And I said, well, it's very easy. Grab the computer with the software and everything, take it to the parking lot, and just drop it on the cement. Whatever is still good afterwards is software. Whatever doesn't work anymore is the computer, and that separates computer to software. And that, I was tongue-in-cheek, but that did open up them figuring out that a computer was
Right.
an idiot until software was used,
Hmm.
So it was we were way ahead of ourselves is what happened, and then, like I said, we were being pecked pretty much by people that were just stealing our stuff, and then the one thing, the last nail on the coffin was, and I was actually at the meeting, and I almost had a heart attack, young guy's heart attack at that point. There was a snot-nosed kid meeting in Upper California, Silicon Valley with a snot-nosed guy named Bill Gates, and was there to see what they were going to be doing with uh, going to this DOS system, MS-DOS. I mean, that was so unknown at that point because CPM was doing everything we needed, but this MS-DOS then was something that was supposed to be twice as powerful as CPM no matter what, and 8-bit by 8-bit processing, which it really truly at first was not. They used to say it was 16-bit processing their systems, and it really wasn't. It was 8-bit by 8-bit, two separate processors that were kind of mingled together. But anyhow, Gates bought MS-DOS for pennies on a dollar. I mean, if I'd hate to even guess, but I thought I remember for $3,000 he bought from college, like MIT guys. They weren't from MIT, the actual
Wow.
beginning of MS-DOS operating system.
Wow.
Yeah, and he bought that, and then he ran with it. But he was a genius, because he's really young, but he is a genius. And they said now it's going to be a MS-DOS world, and it did go to become a MS-DOS world. And as soon as it did, we were trying to scramble to try to redo everything from scratch, and we just couldn't do it. We didn't have the money. People were holding back on CPM computers because that was already done. Why buy a CPM computer when MS-DOS was the magic computer operating system? So that did it for us, and we just died there. But the good thing about it is the people that created DOS talking computers. There was like Hutchinson, Mr. Hutchinson, and many other people. They took our logic and our kind of blueprints and was able to do conversions because they were starting fresh and clean and going to MS-DOS, and they took off then. So MS-DOS, then I went to Windows, and then there was one blind company that was a friend of mine, Ted Henter, that was he had a pretty big talking computer company at that point called JAWS, which was the absolute best there was and still is. And then it was sold, and it became Freedom Scientific, and they were doing all different types of stuff that talk now, hardware and software, and it doesn't bother me. People ask me, am I bitter about it because between all what happened? The only thing that I really disliked was these people that bought one of our computers and then was able to give it away to hundreds of people. They were thinking that they were literally killing us, but taking, you can't, you take them to court and it would cost so much, it would be unbelievable, so but it is a kick in the pants in that way. But in other ways, I could say now that we did this. We were the ones that started it, and I'm still called to Washington D.C. to DoD, Department of Defense, and DOJ yet for talking about. They get these grants proposals for stuff for the handicap, blind, deaf, and that. And they ask me, or they give me all the information. I fly out there, and it's it's not making money or nothing. They just pay to get you there. They pay for your motel, which costs enough in Washington, D.C. But I do a lot of, saying this would work, this won't work, this I don't have no idea if it would or not, And
Right. A lot
I
of
did.
consulting.
I was the only thing I could say with all that stuff is I was the one that gave the okay to give tons of money for movies, shows to have the audio description, and TV to have audio description. That was something that I was proud to say that I okayed. That might have not been today, or somebody else would have had some maybe better. Who knows? But
Seriously,
so
no, that's a huge contribution. Thank you for that.
oh, you're
I
welcome.
have the honor of producing a podcast called Scene Change. It's for the National Federation of the Blind's Performing Arts Division,
Oh, sure.
and they we just put out actually a two-part episode on audio description and activists in the field, including Joel Snyder, the
Yeah,
legendary head of the ACB's audio description program, and
right.
who fronts a big chunk of that movement. And so that's it, what a cool parallel to be able to have
Yeah,
spoken
yeah.
to
This
you
was,
and him within the same 6 week period is really great. Thank you
yeah.
for that, and for the incredible foundation that you created for the talking computers. I have a lot of respect for that and
You're
a lot of
welcome. No,
appreciation for that, and everyone in the community has,
I got to give a
because we're able to
confession
use.
right at that point, though. When I first started with the SAM operator at the very beginning of telling him what we need to do, I did it selfishly for my own sake because I did not. I thought abacus was an insult to the blind. So it
Full
was
circle
to
back to the
begin with for
abacus.
my use, man. I wanted it.
I love that. John, seriously, I hardly had to ask any question or say any word during this entire hour. It's been really informative, really interesting. I loved hearing your story. You're a great storyteller, man. Thank you for
Oh,
sharing that, your experience and your company and all of your contributions to the community. I mean, this is really the
well, you're
foundation
welcome.
that we've
And
been building on for 45 years almost. So thank you for that.
yeah, it is incredible. And I mean, generally, what there is now for the blind, I mean, truly, well, you have a piece of software that is the most, when you're getting into AI and stuff. That blows me away now because I'm out of it enough that thinking what could be done and added on to and everything. The blind now don't have an excuse like they did in the 80s, 70s, and before as far as mainstream work for the most part. But
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
And years ago, it was disgusting because Washington D.C., the DOD, DOJ, all the alphabetical soup numbers, they would hire. They'd have to have so many percentage of blind people. And when I went to the Department of Justice to begin with, they had like 20, these weren't the lawyers, but they had about 20 blind people sitting around a table smoking and drinking coffee. And I said, what do you guys do? You know, tell me your jobs. Well, we don't do much because there's nothing we could do because we're blind. And I said, well, why are you working here, 5 days a week? Yeah, we work here, but we do a little bit help others with stuff and that. And that really was sickening, hearing that, and thinking, boy, they were using the blind just to get the numbers up in the government, So,
man, that's powerful. We're really fortunate to have all that we do, man, and I really appreciate the contribution and the part that you played in that. Thank you for all of that and for giving me all of your time and sharing this story. I can't wait to post this so that everyone can hear this, because it's really neat, and it's something that I've always been interested in all my life, watching these documentaries on the progression of computers. I've been a nerd all my life, let me tell you.
Well, I wish I knew that. I could have had you working with us and kept it going, probably.
I was born about 16 years after your company went bankrupt, I'm afraid.
Right.
So I wouldn't have done you much good in 1983.
No, yeah, well,
I wouldn't have helped much, I'm afraid.
Your knowledge, though, is there, and that would really be beneficial. But thank you so much for calling me, and I really appreciate it. And
I appreciate you, man. So much,
now
love and
I'm
respect
older
for what you do.
Dirt, so I'm kind of getting out of the computer game now. So, I'm pretty much just fixing computers for people and stuff like that yet. But that's all,
That's great, man. Are you still in Minnesota?
Yes.
Still living
I'm in actually
nice.
Anoka, which is a suburb of Minneapolis.
Right on. Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So,
a lot of good things in the
you.
blindness community happening up there.
Yeah. They I don't know. They used to call this in the disco days. They used to call this the disco center. I don't know how they could have done that. I never found anything that was incredibly disco big time here. But it's a good state though. Like Kentucky.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I do love Kentucky.
Yeah, I do too.
Born and raised in Louisville, man.
Yep.
Thank you so much for all of your time.
You're welcome.
Love hearing the story. Thank you,
have
my
a
friend.
good day.
Yes, you too. Keep in touch. This has been Supersense Presents Live. If you have anyone you'd like us to interview, if you'd like us to interview you, let us know. We are at Supersense AI on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. We are supersense.app on the web. You can check out our blog where we have other interviews. You can sign up for our newsletter, product updates, sales campaigns, all that jazz. You can find it there. Thank you so much to you, and especially to John, for this great episode. I appreciate you. Thank you very much.